Welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, where we bring sight to the blind and freedom to those enslaved by our pornified culture. Here, we dive into hard but important topics such as pornography, sexual identity, true freedom, real love, and living marriage well. Go deep with us as we uncover what Redeemed Vision means for each of us living in the world today. Come to know yourself, the power of redemption through Jesus Christ, the joy of laughter, and how to live in gratitude and wonder. This is Redeemed Vision.
Howdy. Welcome to another edition of the Redeemed Vision podcast. I'm your host, Steve Pokorny. It's an honor to have you here. This is the Redeemed Vision podcast, and this is an outreach of Freedom Coaching Foundation Incorporated, where we do a lot of work in helping to build a culture of life and love. An honor to have you here. Today's episode is going to be something special. But before we get into that, I want to share a little bit about some of our sponsors, those who help us to pay our bills, to get the message out. First one up, as if anybody is a fan of this podcast, is Voyage Comics, and a lot of Christian media is pretty lacking and has been historically. That's not a Voyage Comics. Voyage Comics has beautiful art, stories for all ages that help to drive people into their Catholic faith. And you can pick these up and read them anywhere. And so I encourage you to click the link below, and you can discover a world of awesome stories. And by doing so, by getting a subscription there, supports this mission of the Redeemed Vision podcast. Secondly, also is My Catholic Will, and in here, My Catholic Will. If you don't have a will, well, what are you waiting for, right? You can't take it with you, as the old phrase goes. You can have fun with stuff here, but we want to make a legacy for those that we love. And My Catholic Will allows you to set up your will simply, and guess what? It's free. If you click the link below, we're covering the cost of that, and it allows you to be able to set up your loved ones so that they're going to be taken care of moving forward. So I encourage you to click the link, and it's mycatholicwill.com/freedom coaching, and to get your will started today. And the other element is this is the Redeemed Vision podcast is an outreach of, as I mentioned, the Freedom Coaching Foundation Incorporated. The major work that we do is freedom coaching, where we work one-to-one with those involved with pornography, attraction, and compulsion, both men and women, to break that attraction permanently through a transformation of mind, heart, and vision. And we encourage you, if this is an issue going on in your life, or it's an issue of someone that you love, because this issue is legion, please check out freedom-coaching.net, and we would be honored to serve. And then the last piece of the work that we do is an encouragement. If this podcast encourages you, if it strengthens your faith, we encourage you to donate. We encourage you to offer part of your tithe up to support the work that we're doing. It provides for scholarship money for clients who can't afford the work that they need to do with their coach. It allows to provide for programming like this, and also to create new programming coming forth. And I encourage you to check out freedom-coaching.net for a lot of the work that we're doing. So if it's on your heart to give, please give generously. And if, as we say all times here, click the bell, like, subscribe, spread this message far and wide, because what you'll hear here is oftentimes very different than the messages that's coming out from our culture, but the message of our culture doesn't satisfy. But here we want to give you something that you're going to be able to really sink your teeth in. It's going to be satisfying, and it's going to encourage you to live your best life. Now, on to today. It's been said that our culture is oversexed, from movies to magazines, television programs, especially a lot of the stuff we see online and in social media. So much of our content, we can say, has been dripping with sexuality, and it's inescapable because it's everywhere. I'd like to say something relatively shocking. I believe we're not oversexed. We're undersexed. As a culture, we've forgotten what sex is in the first place. And this miseducation has impacted us, all of us, in the negative. Now, caught in the crosshairs of this malformation are children, our children. These are the next generation of leaders and they are to prepare the way for the next generation to follow that, right? So what they learn or fail to learn now will have an impact for potentially generations to come. All hands on deck, right? Getting this issue of sexuality correctly is of incredible importance for our sexuality, who we are as male or female, and how this impacts relationships is critical for the well-being of civilization. It's overwhelming, the issues, we know that. And so in order to help us navigate a little bit, to go deeper on these issues and to present a viable option to especially help our children navigate the pornified culture that we live in, is my next guest, Gabriel Milano. Gabriel is a graduate of Franciscan University and the John Paul II Institute. I'd like to say he was stalking me because he came a couple of years after I finished in those institutions. So I know that he's well educated. His background is being involved in Net Ministries and the Culture Project. If you don't know those, go check them out. They're great organizations. And here in those organizations especially, he was able to provide education on chastity to high school parents, high school students, through the lens of St. John Paul the Great's theology of the body. He currently is a program director for TOBET, which we're going to get into today, and he lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And most importantly, Gabriel is preparing to die. He's preparing to get married. So please pray for him as he prepares for this great sacrament. Gabriel Milano, welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the honors. And it was kind of funny how I just followed right after you there on each of those different steps. So it's very grateful for my education. Grateful to be here as well with you.
Awesome. And I definitely want to get into, Gabriel, on your background, your education, especially those elements. But as anybody who's a fan of the podcast here knows, there's something very important that I must ask you. Gabriel, do you have a dad joke for me?
I do, yeah. So I'll give two. One that I usually give to my girlfriend all the time, which she rolls her eyes all the time. When she'll be like, okay, I need to go change, and I'll hold her and be like, never change.
That reminds me of the one that I will usually give out if my kids come up, Daddy, I'm hungry, make me a sandwich. And I go, poof, you're a sandwich, right? So exactly. But anyway, are you a Star Wars fan?
I would say I enjoy Star Wars. Yeah.
All right. So why did Han Solo? Why did Princess Leia fall for such a scoundrel?
I don't know why.
Because he was so handsome. Please don't turn off the podcast, folks. We want to share those with people because yes, we like people to suffer. No, I'm kidding. But because we oftentimes get into some challenging topics, so we want to set the mood right with a little levity here. And Gabriel, I want to go into something very interesting in your full bio, which I didn't read your full bio, but because I wanted to get into our conversation for today. You and you're at Franciscan, if I have my information correct, you had a thesis that the thesis that you wrote, and on that here you talked about two important topics: that of circumcision of the heart and the consummation and the consumption of shame. Not consummation, that's maybe different, but the consumption of shame. Can you share just a little bit about these subjects and how do these topics impact you personally?
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been kind of drawn to study love, and I didn't really know why for the longest time, honestly. And so what I ended up, so in college, I did my thesis on shame, and I don't know. I think it's because I don't know. Love has always been this. I've always been kind of a lone wolf. I don't know. I've always been okay to do things by myself, and I've had to grow outside of that. And I don't know. Maybe there's been a lot of almost hiding, as it were, of my heart from other people, and maybe because there's this fear of shame that I don't know, others might judge me and not see me. And that's what this the consumption of shame through love is this idea that when you're fully seen by another person and you're truly loved, that shame just it just like the darkness, it just like flees and just completely destroys shame. And so it's just, yeah, so that it was, I kind of talked about the metaphysical dimension of that in my my thesis, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I want to just a comment or two on that is I like to say that there's 6 deepest desires in the human heart: to be seen, to be known, and to be loved, and then to, from that space, to know, to see, and to love others, right? Mm-hmm. This is the core of every human being on the planet. And when we, especially with the work that we do in freedom coaching, right, the 3-headed hydra that impacts so many of the clients that we see is that of guilt, of shame, and of self-hatred, right? Shame especially screams to us the idea that we're unlovable, that what we've done is unforgivable, that's irredeemable, and that I'm going to be broken forever. And so when we are able to encounter genuine, real love, right, if we are open to have the courage to open that space up, right, which is really difficult. Right?
It is, yeah,
right?
It's hard to to make that step, to invite people in, and I've also had to learn too, like, people need to earn that space. People need to you need to be trustworthy, and so you need to be worthy of that trust, and so that's hard. That's hard to be able to know. And I just talked to a buddy who is actually, he was just talking about his porn addiction with someone, and the guy didn't receive it very well at all. He was like, it's like, dude, you've been struggling with this forever. Just basically get over it. Like, and it's like, dude, I wish I could. Like, I'm trying, and it's not like I want to be addicted to this thing, and so yeah, there's a need to be. I mean, yeah, shame. So the problem is usually pornography is like perpetuated by this shame, and so when you respond with that lack of love, lack of acceptance, lack of like truly receiving the person, like, you're basically guaranteeing them to run back to, I mean, I shouldn't say guaranteeing them because they have free will, but like, you're really not making it easy at all for them,
Yeah, no. And again, we folks who are listening to this here, talking with Gabriel Milano of TOBET, we didn't really plan to go into a conversation on pornography here necessarily, but I think it's really important because that aspect of shame, which is attached in so much of the pornography use, right, is crippling here, and that is especially something that inhibits a lot of healing. But what we want to say, the movement forward, is to get to a space and a place where we can open up to somebody that we can trust. It's somebody that is willing to actually hear me, and the encouragement for them to get a little bit of curious, not come with judgment, but come with curiosity. What's going on here? What's driving that behavior? But then also the person who's finding themselves having an attachment to this, to get curious as well. What's driving this desire? What am I really looking for? Right. And this is one professional cue here is it's the pornography and unchaste behavior. It's a problem, but it's not the main problem. It's the other stuff that's underneath that stuff. Right. And if we don't acknowledge that, if we don't acknowledge that reality, the deeper fire that's driving the smoke, shall we say, then healing's not going to be possible here. Right. Now, our way forward with that, like what we're doing here, is we don't want to isolate. We the solo, like, I know the language you're using. Man, we need to get a beer. You're in Dallas. I'm in San Antonio. We need to figure this out. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a beer and cigar, maybe a scotch and cigar. Let's make that very clear. Conversation, right? And but from this here is it's finding who are those people that I can open my space, my heart, and this space up that only God typically can get access to, right? But to begin to open that up with people who are earning my trust, it's that way is the starting point of healing, right? So I love the fact that you have an education about this. You took this very seriously, bringing this into your thesis work. So I want to bring us back even earlier, right? I want to go back to childhood, right? We want to get to know a little bit of Gabriel, not in diapers necessarily, but Gabriel, how would you describe, what was life like in your home growing up? I mean, what were the messages about human sexuality, about the body, about relationships that you received in your formation as a young lad?
That's a really good question. I think, yeah, I think it's not accidental that I went and studied theology and marriage and family at the JP2 Institute, because I love both my parents, and they really did their best to raise me and my siblings, older brother, younger sister, and we all went to Franciscan. We're all really devoutly Catholic, so they did a really good job in many different aspects, and so I'm very grateful for them. And to be honest, I absolutely owe my faith and a lot of different aspects of my personality and my drive towards growth to my parents. And they're also both divorced. And honestly, there was some friction about that growing up, so they ended up divorcing in college. So, but I mention this because I never really felt like there was like some stability there, I always really struggled with this concept of what I guess, what does a real health relationship look like? It was hard for me to connect with other people. Yeah, I don't know. Does that kind of bring some clarity? I feel like I'm still maybe not being as clear as maybe you want. So I don't know if you have more specific questions. Oh, I can't hear you now. Maybe it's a problem.
No, unmuting really helped on the mic, so that's on me. Welcome. So folks, sometimes there's technical difficulties that happen outside, and then there's user error, and in this case, and in many cases, it's user error. So you're welcome. Okay. Anyway, and there's lots of life lessons to learn with that little phrase, but we'll save it for next time. So on this, Gabriel, like obviously there's a background of kind of a troubled marriage that you're kind of growing up in, and were you aware that kind of stuff was going on there?
What do you mean? Was I
between your parents? Obviously, with the friction between your parents, were you aware of that growing up?
I think I always just thought it was normal. I think, you mentioned I'm engaged right now, and she's actually a psychologist, or sorry, not a psychologist. She's a counselor, and she actually just finished her master's degree at Divine Mercy.
Congratulations!
What?
Congratulations! That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and so we talk about this. We talk about some of these dynamics of and that like sometimes you don't know you experience trauma, but you did. Yeah. Sometimes you don't know that, and that's something that a lot of counselors will kind of realize and try to walk people through. And some people are like, oh yeah, like I don't know, I basically could never have any friends over, and because I don't know, so I couldn't necessarily didn't necessarily know how things were. And so it was. Yeah, there were certain aspects of it where I didn't feel very rooted in my home environment. I didn't feel like it was a place that I could really call home, and that there was certainly some anger sometimes, by one or both of my parents, and so I just thought that was normal. I just thought it was like that's where I'm kind of getting at. A lot of times we think, oh yeah, I mean that's just I don't know, that's just my life. That's just that's everyone does that, right? And then you're like, no, actually, it's really not healthy to yell at one another, and that's actually not a positive way of interacting with people, and just little micro things like that of realizing, oh, actually, this wasn't healthy, and it's very difficult because you need to it's like, well, I love my parents, but does that mean that I should, like everything they did was okay? It's like, no, and so it's really hard to sift through that and to accept that they were amazing in many areas, and in many areas they weren't, and it's hard, Yeah,
and in no way are we casting blame upon your parents here, yes. Right? It's I like to say a couple things. The term dysfunctional family is redundant. Okay, unless you're the Holy Family, and guess what? Anything went wrong, they're like Joseph, right? Like in trouble, but he's surrounded by perfect people, and he's also a man of virtue, and so those two combinations, even in his imperfect humanity, is able to raise him up to the level of being a living saint, right? That's a beautiful thing, right? For us, sometimes we're not so lucky, right? We're not so lucky, and we're not so blessed because our parents are broken. We have our brokenness here, right? And you're preparing to enter into a sacrament. You've got your brokenness. And I hate to break it to you, your fiance, she's got brokenness as well, right? And so that's the stuff to work through. But you brought up something really important, that we oftentimes will accept the reality that is presented before us, right? And this was just normal, what you said. So let me ask this question.
Sure.
Was there a moment, or can you think of a moment where that facade began to crumble? Like, something's wrong here, right? This is not the way that men and women are supposed to interact here. Was there anything that you can share on that front?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there are many different micro moments of that. I think one was like when I realized that like my parents' favorite song was this song called "I Love You But I Hate You."
Wow.
And I at first I thought, I was like, oh yeah, that's just their song. And then years later, like, and then at some, I mean, I think it was, I mean, honestly, a lot of it really started to, I feel like my whole world kind of fractured when they did get divorced. And then, and so that's really when I started to like make those connections of like, yeah, I guess they were saying that, you know, and they did say like, I love you, but I hate you. And that was their relationship. Sometimes it's like, you know, that's not right, you know? So
I want to ask this, if you'll permit me, if you're willing to go here, okay? And again, this is we believe in freedom here. So if it's not good, then we'll divert. But you mentioned your parents got divorced when you're in college.
Yeah.
Your whole world got fractured.
Yeah.
Can you share what that experience was like? What does that look like? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I guess I would say it was. It's almost like it felt like, it's gonna sound like dramatic, but like this is what it felt like, is like almost like my entire life was a lie in some ways. And that what they had to, that all those little moments of like, okay, does that mean, so my life, which was one before, now is split almost, like it's really weird, but it just because right, and then they got an annulment, which is beautiful on some levels for them, you know, and I've heard a lot of healing that comes from that, and I would encourage that, right, for someone who has a divorce and wants to, you know, I would encourage them to try for that, but for a child, or I guess a child,
child, you're an adult child, yeah.
Adult child. What that says is, okay, so they never had a marriage to begin. So they did get annulment. So they never had a marriage to begin with. What was all of that then? You know, how do I understand that the fact that I lived within this family that wasn't marriage? That's what I always saw as marriage. So it's very hard to describe, other than it just felt like my entire sense of marriage just kind of got fractured, as it were, and just fell apart. And that's, I think, in some ways I've always been drawn to understanding love, even way before this. And so it made sense for me to go to the JP2 Institute, but I think also I needed to piece that together a little bit, you know?
And thank you for being vulnerable here, right? It's in our vulnerable, like, because the lie that we've been told, especially as men, that if I let you in the space, you're going to destroy me, right? And that's certainly none of not what we do here, right? But it's our vulnerability actually can be our greatest strength, because it allows others into our world, right? And it's in communio, in communion, and coming together. That's where we find the greatest strength, right? We do have to do our part, but we're meant to do this together. So in here, right, and I think you're bringing up really important points here, Gabriel, especially about the reality of marriage and the reality of divorce, right, when that does come in here, right? And again, let's define some terms for those who are hearing this, right? The Catholic Church doesn't believe that in divorce, right? There's marriage, and marriage is till death does us part. What an annulment is when a man and woman come before the altar of God. They promise to love each other freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. Those are the vows there. But something at the moment of consent, when they're supposed to give their consent, a free will consent, something inhibits them from doing so. So they're not capable of marriage at that moment to this person, right? And so then the whole annulment process, and that's why it can very well be a healing process, is the discovery of what that is, what were those wounds, and then what are the things that maybe as a human being I need to work on, right? it's a process, but it does take a weight. And for us as children, right? I'm not my parents were married until my father passed away when I was 16, when I was 17. But I know when my mother passed away when she was 16, when I was 16. With us here. But what we find here is our parents are like God, they're God to us. They bring us into existence, and then they have to take care of us to sustain for us in all ways, even including emotionally, right? And so when something happens to that union, that fracturing is a big deal. And that's why organizations such as it's Dan Miola, Dr. Dan Miola with it's Healing Wounds. I think that's what it's called. They do a lot of work for adult children of divorce, right? And so from that point here, and we interviewed him on our podcast, and I encourage those who are hearing this to check that out here. But so from that, right, you've got this hunger, this real thirst for love, this desire for it. You're discovering this breakdown here that happened in your parents' marriage, right? What comes next then for you? How does that move the story along for you?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of multiple things are happening at this time, I guess, for my story, because so I studied at the John Paul II Institute, and that kind of pushed me towards understanding it. And I feel like some of my friends, and maybe you can attest to this, one of my friends, he felt like when he went to the JP2 Institute, he felt like almost like the Matrix, like the whole world makes sense now, because at the JP2 Institute, what we're really studying is the pattern by which all things are patterned, which is the Holy Trinity. And so we're truly contemplating and getting the full vision of how the entire world is patterned off of the Trinity in being a communion of persons. And that means also, so it's, even though it says we study theology and marriage and family, it's honestly understanding the whole universe patterned off the Trinity. And so that helped me understand, as it were, almost like the Platonic forms of like, this is what it means. This is love. This is what it means to be human, that we're made for communion, we're made for connection. And then from there, I went and studied. And then I went was a missionary at the Culture Project, and I gave talks on sexual integrity and the dignity of the human person. And from that place of studying or working there, I feel like I was able to thrive in taking those forms and making them real, as it were, of like really seeing, okay, how do these truths, how are they rooted in my very experience of reality, of love, of connecting with others. And so I feel like that was a really key moment, that next moment of like working there. And just over the next, really 10 years, I feel like I've slowly been gaining more experiences and really, in each of those have really contributed to understanding the nature of love and like what it means to love both in marriage as well as out of marriage. And what is that, how do you develop good friendships? How do you develop, when I was, in the past, I've been a part of different Catholic communities, like so many different Catholic communities. And some of them, there was one I can think specifically where there was almost an expectance of like complete vulnerability, as it were. And I actually think it was very unhealthy, actually, because what happened was then you left it, like there's no like slow buy-in. There's no slow of like, I can trust you,
Yes.
So there's just this complete vulnerability, and then you leave, and then it's like, oh, see you later. Like I'll never see you, basically never see you again. It's like, my gosh, like this is, and so there's a need to see that the human heart is like a sanctuary.
Yes.
That you slowly unveil before people that prove themselves as being trustworthy. And that's just one out of like many different examples from my life, though. That sort of was the kind of next step. And then I did teaching, actually youth ministry for a year, then teaching for 2 years, and then a couple of years later, joined on with TOBET.
Awesome. And we're going to get into TOBET in just a moment. And thank you, because we have these conversations so that people can get to know who's behind some of the good work that's being done here, right? Because again, like anybody who does business, we do business with those that we trust, right? And we do trust with those who are opening up and are able to be vulnerable there, right? But I promise you, my brothers and sisters, unlike the community that Gabriel mentioned here, right? We're not going to love you and leave you, right? We want to open up, also provide a space and a place where you can start to get real about the issues going in your life, but also pave a path forward to find some real answers there and get you connected to a real community, right? So, Gabriel, a lot of part of the work that you've done, right? And I got bit by the theology of the body bug. You got bit by it as well, apparently. So, what was your first exposure to theology of the body? How has this impacted your life?
I love talking about my first experience with it because I think it's funny, honestly. Because, So I was studying at the I was studying at Franciscan, and it was really, it's kind of, I find also funny is that I actually did take a marriage class, but for whatever reason, I think I just wasn't in a place. Maybe I was studying the priesthood, so I was like, oh yeah, I don't need to learn about marriage. Well, that was smart, but anyway. And so anyway, so I didn't really like read the theology of the body, even though I'm pretty sure I had to read certain parts of it and love responsibility for read certain texts. And so I didn't really do it. And then the summer before my senior year, so between junior and senior year, I was sitting in my room, and my brother also was studying theology, and I was sitting in his room. I think he was visiting his now wife, which is funny. And so I saw the theology of the body literally just sitting on a shelf. I literally have never watched or read anything by Jason Everett or Christopher West. So, which I find really funny. In the first, literally, yes, that's it. So that, I
right there.
And I started, my statement was, some people have been saying this like a good book, like maybe I should read it. And so I picked up the actual Theology of the Body textbook.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had like 3 years of theology and philosophy to prepare me for it, so I could actually read it. And I slowly go through it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Like, I know people have said this is really good, but like, I didn't know, and because it's what it does. A lot of people, sometimes people think theology of the body is just about sex or whatever. And sure, maybe like the end point of why he created the whole of theology of the body was to comment on Humanae Vitae, for instance. And so maybe that's part of it, but mostly it is creating a Christian anthropology by which we can understand why we even exist,
Yes.
Just understanding what it means to be human. And so it was extremely liberating for me. And ever since then, I just like got hooked. And I read through the whole thing that summer. And then I started listening to Christopher West and just got sucked in. I just binged all of his audiobooks basically, and then read them again and again. Honestly, it was just like so good. And yeah, that kind of propelled me forward after that. And I feel like it just never left me. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't get into theology of the body. Maybe it was a phase or whatever, And for some people, maybe it is, it comes in a specific time and then maybe move on with something else. But it's really been staying with me for a while. And I feel like this is something that God has called me to proclaim in some way, in some capacity.
Beautiful, beautiful. You are expressing that when we take what this theology of the body is, that helps to explain the gospel of the body, the good news of the body, it changes everything. And so I would say to any of those who kind of picked it up or kind of got an idea and kind of put it down, pick it back up, learn this, enter it. But again, it must be much more than a head knowledge, right? It must move down here. And so as a word of advice and caution, my dear brother Gabriel, you have a lot of head knowledge here. You're about to enter into a living relationship with another human being of the female species. We can say that. So it becomes a very different and very real thing. So be prepared. That will take you so far. And then we need a whole lot of grace to be able to love the other who are like, I don't understand you. And she's like, I don't understand you. Let's go to the cross and let's figure this out together, right? Beautiful, beautiful thing. But you've got a foundation here, and that's what I want to say here. And this foundation is the foundation of the work of TOBET, the Theology of the Body Evangelization Team. And for those who don't know, we had the privilege of interviewing Monica Aschauer on a previous podcast. I encourage you to take a look at, take a listen to that podcast. Very illuminating to get to know her and her heart and the work she does. But you have been hired specifically to, and I'm going to use my language, you correct my language, but to basically create an entire program, right, called My Body, My Identity. So can you just open up for us this space? Tell us about the specs of this program.
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, Monica hired me for this program called My Body, My Identity. And it's so maybe to put it in its proper place within our program. So we have this series called The Body Matters, right? And so Monica, she was on the podcast. She was talking about this program. Mm-hmm. And so what's really awesome about this is, as I mentioned about the theology of the body, it's not just about sex. It's about creating a good Christian anthropology. And what I love about Monica's books is that this creates a good Christian anthropology without getting into difficult topics for these children, because they just really need to understand their body, that the body is good, and that life is good, and so just creating that as a foundation. So the Body Matters series creates that foundation, but then we still were we were in conversation with bishops, several bishops, that were like, these are great, we're using them, but like the world is kind of on fire. Like things are not going well on multiple capacities of, just with transgenderism and, homosexuality and abortion and pornography. And how do we talk to our children about these? Yes. Because sometimes they'll hear about them and you might not know, and or maybe you will if you're lucky, really, and so how do we prepare these children to address and protect them from these ideologies or issues or dangers? And so she hired me. So I say this because we were asked to do this, to create this program that addresses very specifically these difficult topics, but in an age appropriate way. And so this program is called My Body, My Identity: Discovering God's Design. And my coworker, he likes to say it's about the 5 bad things, as we internally call it sometimes, which is those things I mentioned: pornography, transgenderism, homosexuality, abortion, and just kind of promiscuity in general, like having sex before marriage. And so this is a massive program which addresses those 5 topics over really from like pre-K all the way to high school, but again in a very age appropriate way that veils as much as humanly possible their innocence and very much so in the early stages.
Let me interject here, because I want to get into this, and I think this is beautiful. And by the way, I do want to make this clear: is it complete? Is it ready to go? Is it available?
It's not ready to go. We have recorded the main part of it for high school, for instance, and middle school. So those videos we've already actually recorded. We're creating also some foundational videos, which are going to record in about a month and a half or so.
Awesome.
We have already written several books. So this is Discovering the Wonder of Life. So I'm also a fantasy author in addition to this. So Monica,
really?
I am actually.
What have you written? Hold on, detour, please. Where are we going with this? What have you written?
So I've written a tale. Actually, I actually currently, unfortunately, I really wish I would have had my new website ready. I actually got down my old website and my new one, but I've currently written a series called Aria's Adventures.
Aria's Adventures.
Yeah, so it's a fantasy series about a little redhead girl who has powers of empathy, and so she can talk to animals, and she can heal people, and so basically I created an entire world very much like Tolkien. And so I have a huge capacity for creativity and story writing. Stories are like the air that I breathe, honestly. Beautiful. I love Tolkien. And it's just, stories really make me come alive. And so when I was hired on, I'm like, let's make these all into stories. And Monica's like, awesome, let's do it. And so this one, so it's about this girl right here, Isabella, and so her little brother's being her little brother is in her mom's womb right now, but she's like, I don't know, this little, like, I'm not going to be special anymore because he's taking the limelight and everything. And so how do I know that I'm still special, you know? And so so there's this, but in the midst of that, she also is going to the zoo and discovering the wonder of life in the womb. And so seeing little baby animals in their mother's wombs. And then, you know, spoiler, they see a little baby. She sees her baby brother in her mom's womb projected out as well. And so this, even though it doesn't talk about abortion at all, it's directly like it helps to rebuff or against abortion later on, that like, oh no, I read this, that like there are these little babies and they look like just little babies in the womb. So like, why would you do that? You know? And so we're kind of addressing the ideology in an indirect way, but in, I think, a way that's effective.
Okay, so we've learned something very valuable about Gabriel here, folks. Like, he's a fantasy author. He knows how to write. He knows how to tell a story, and that's crazy important. Ari's Adventures, correct?
Yes, Ari's Adventures.
I want a URL on this, pal. Okay, so you've been warned. Okay, and wait, who's the audience for that?
Yeah, so it's 7 to 10 years old.
Cool.
Is
very cool.
The audience, yeah. And
okay,
so
awesome.
I'll be aging the characters up.
Cool. Okay, so check that out. My brothers and sisters will get that in the show notes. So moving into this program, right, and called My Body, My Identity. And this ideally it's gonna be a K through 12 program, correct?
Yes.
Great, awesome. Yeah. So they're still in the process of creating this, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, pre-K.
Pre-K to through high school. Fantastic. Because a lot of parents feel, I would say, inadequate to talk about these issues. They feel like hypocrites, especially with things that they've done. So how would you say, can you like zero on this? How would you say that you're able to in this approach? Because you're not married, dude. You don't have any kids, to my knowledge. Right? How are you able to write on such difficult topics and this is sensitive ages? And what would you say your approach is to this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've consulted with many different people as we go through on these stories to make sure, like, are these age appropriate? Are these ideas too complicated? And sometimes they are, and in which we're like, okay, no, it's too how do we simplify it? How do we make it really digestible? And so that's one thing that we do is we've kind of been working through that as kind of a model. What was the other question that you asked? I'm sorry.
So the question is, like, how do we approach these delicate topics?
Yeah. I guess it's it's kind of being aware of those, what exactly is appropriate for certain ages, right? And so that was a huge debate early on, trying to figure out what, for instance, the people that we were hired to do this, they're like, well, they want us to address these topics. How in the world do you address these topics without talking about the topics? Like, how do you talk about abortion without talking about abortion? How do you talk about transgenderism? So this is discovering the gift of being male and female. How do you talk about transgenderism without it? And it's so this one's about a boy who is kind of playing and is pretending to be a dog. And then kind of takes it a little bit too far, and then his teacher has to show him, like, oh, actually, like, pretending is good, but we shouldn't take to pretending too far. And so we don't talk about transgenderism at all, but it's in a way that so we basically for certain grades we like, okay, how much can we talk about, basically? And so that's it takes a lot of time and effort to figure out how much can we talk about and what's too much. And so for most of the grades, most of the topics, we tend to veil on them, but still, like, as much build it out as we can.
Yeah, sounds like you're doing your homework on this. And the image that I have in my head is that of approaching this from the true, the good, the beautiful approach here, right? The issues, and you highlighted specifically 5 of them. There's certainly going to be subcategories of any of those things, right? The problems are legion in many cases, right? And one of the things that we will teach in working with our clients is where your focus goes, your energy flows, right? If we're constantly focusing on the evil, then that's where we're going to kind of spend our time there. And it's real easy to go down that rabbit hole. But what if we focused on the good, the true, and the beautiful, the unifying, those things that really satisfying, right? So yes, abortion is the murdering of a child, right? I'm probably going to strike from YouTube on this. I don't care. But if you do a flip side of this, right? What is it about that? It's the gift and this miracle of life. The miracle of every human being is unique and unique and unrepeatable, made in the image of God as a beloved son or daughter of God, right? To highlight that and that goodness there, that is really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's actually was our kind of approach of early on. How can we talk about the positive reality of whatever it is, right? And clearly there's maybe some child who's struggling with something that's in some ways draws out that positive reality. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think you guys are meeting a very important space especially in the Catholic world. How do we address these issues? But I think even outside Catholics, they're going to find some value in this because these are big issues. How do we talk about these things? Because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? So first, and that's why I would say what separates the work of TOBET from your typical sex education, secular sexual education, secular sexual education, and I'd love to hear more of your commentary on what I'm about to say, is more focused on technique and pursuit of pleasure and things like that. Whereas at root of theology of the body is trying to work through answering 2 major questions. A, what does it mean to be human? And B, how do I live my life in a way that's going to bring fulfillment to my deepest desires, right? And so with that softball lead in, shall we say, how would you say that is filtering in throughout the program?
So what aspects of that? So how like the true, the good, and the beautiful, like how is that kind of
identity and action? Identity, who I am, and action of how do I live my life in a way that I'm going to be fulfilled. How would you say that bleeds in age appropriately in communicating that?
Identity and action. Yeah, I mean, because it's right. This my body, my identity, discovering God's design, and so it's. Yeah, I mean, I think early on it's kind of forming the positive realities in some ways of so for instance, like right, so she right here will kind of project up like some XY chromosomes, and like every little piece of you is actually a boy, and so helping them to see, oh, actually your identity is rooted in your body, and so it's always bringing it back to the body. In because this is right, so it's the theology of the body. It's my boss Monica Ashauer. She's kind of always very much harps on the body, as it were, which I love. And honestly, I've started to be formed by it as well. That like this is a very key and pivotal progression in dogma, as it were, and at least. This is certainly something Monica Ashauer would say as well, which is that with the theology of the body, there's this new idea that, or this progression and an idea that the body reveals the entire person, right?
Yes.
And so that's what we're trying to see with the Body Matters series, to show them that the body is important. But then with each of these, we're still doing that, but maybe targeting very specific goods, like the goods of being male and female, the good of life, the good of marriage and of promises. And so drawing that out. And then we also have like our animation series, which also does the same thing for 3rd to 5th grade as well, which is pretty exciting.
I'm really excited. Wait, is that out yet? The animation?
No, it's not. But we've honestly, I'm like so excited about that because at first we were going to go with some other company, and I was like, Monica, we really need good animation. Like I want to leave this program. I want to put out this program for people to really enjoy it, not be like, oh, this is just okay, And so so the animations are fantastic. It's this guy that we were able to find, and he's just it's 3D animation, so really state of the art. The person that we have in house, she's doing all the voices for it, which you can't tell, they're all different, but God just like made a lot of things line up. It's crazy because she was just kind of doing some other work for us before, and then I mean she did some acting for us as well, and she actually did a lot of acting for the program for us. But we're like, let's try you at voice acting for this, and I'm like, dang, you're incredible. And so God just like really lined up a lot of it. The stories are just really engaging for the animations as well, and really fun. One of my favorite characters, his name is Jake, and he throws down all these dad jokes all the time. so you awesome. Would honestly, I just enjoy it sometimes. Like there's one video where like this is just delightful to watch because it's just so fun and funny, So,
that is awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Please keep us alerted to when that's coming out. That's something we certainly can promote on social media and the work we do. I love it. And just as just kind of wrap up our little section here, right? And Gabriel, and I want to thank you so much for what is being shared here and the work that you guys are doing. And because I know as a creator myself, it is exhausting work. It is you are pregnant right now. Yes, men can get pregnant, but to give birth to something beautiful, right? As only men as we can do. Okay. So with that there, maybe that got a strike off of me from YouTube by getting confused by that language. But anyway, so from here, Gabriel, because I think this is the message that we especially want to put out here. There's a lot of brokenness in our world, but there's a lot of good also, and God's very much at work. And our sexuality, who we are as male or female, right, impacts the core of who we are. And getting this right is not a side. Getting educated in this is not some side thing. It's going to impact everything we do and how we understand ourselves and how we interact in relationships. How it opens us up into our future vocations, whether it's marriage or celibacy for the kingdom. All these things here, right? So to this gift of the church that's coming through TOBET, right? That can educate a lot of people and help provide context and which provides confidence for parents to be able to educate these children so that as they have this background of what the truth is here, when they are older and they're confronting these issues and it's coming up in a wide variety of situations, they have something they can draw back to. You remember the truth about these things? Oh yeah, that makes sense. And let's talk more about this. So it's not a conversation that's coming out of left field or finger wagging. It's rooted into their deepest desires and rooted in their body. Why? Because the body matters. All right. Yeah. That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Any final words you want to share and to encourage parents and teachers who are navigating through these challenging times?
Yeah, I mean, it's my sister's a mom of 3 beautiful girls, and I love them to death, and yeah, my heart breaks for them in this very difficult and confusing world to try to teach your children about these difficult issues, and so my heart's with you on that, but it's honestly creating this program has been so hope. Like there's just been a lot of hope here because we see the news, we see so many different issues that are going on, especially around transgenderism, for instance. And it's like, gosh, someone needs to do something about this. And then we look at one another like, oh my gosh, like we are. And like, it's so hopeful that like, I really feel like this program will be really transformative for a lot of Christian and Catholic families.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Gabriel, where's the best place for people to get in touch with you, get in touch with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so TOBET.org is the best way if you would like to connect with us, and certainly keep an eye out for it. This next fall, we're hoping to launch our official version, and if you're really eager, maybe reach out to us for a beta test. So we're going to be beta testing this spring with a couple people, and then hopefully launching sometime in the fall. So awesome.
Gabriel, God bless you. Thank God for the work that you're doing, and an encouragement when you get those writer's block, just to go take a walk and then come back at it. Okay. Good. Well, Gabriel, I warned you, we're going to do something completely different. And it's called We call this the 12, and these are 12 questions. Are you aware of this?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right, I promise he has not been fed the questions beforehand. This is one of the fun things we do with all of our guests that come on here. There are 12 questions, as I said beforehand, to you off air. It has nothing to do, but everything to do with what we just talked about, because it has to do with you. So it helps us to get to know you just a little bit more. So Gabriel, are you ready for the 12?
I'm ready for the 12. Let's do it.
All right. Number 1, peanut butter, creamy or crunchy?
Crunchy, definitely crunchy. Yeah.
Number 2, if you could be any Star Wars character, who would you be?
Ooh, that is really difficult. Shoot, I don't know, man. Yeah, dang it. So you're asking a melancholic, and I feel like I need for years. Yeah, probably. Oh yeah, I guess. I mean, I love Ahsoka. Oh no, what's his name from the animation? Ezra. Yeah.
Which one? Oh, is it? Oh yeah, which series?
I think it's called Rebels. Is it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the way, total side note. So, have you ever heard of the Exorcist Files?
No. Oh yeah,
highly recommend it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's a podcast. It's a podcast called The Exorcist File, not the X Files, The Exorcist Files. And so they recommend for younger listeners, because The Exorcist Files definitely not for children. The Firebreaker series, okay? And the writer of that is the writer of what I call if Goonies and Star Wars had a baby, and it would it's the newest Star Wars series, and now it's evading me. It's completely evading me. And but he's one of the writers for this, and he's blatantly Catholic. The name is completely, I'm going to remember it right after we get off the air. So,
dang it. Okay.
Yeah. So as a writer,
go ahead. No.
So go check it out. I'll find the name here. Maybe I'll do a look, and I'll be able to let people know. So we need good Catholics and good writers, and you, Gabriel, are striving to be one of them. So keep going on that.
Nice.
Good. Number 3.
Yeah.
What is your desert island food?
My desert island food. So if I was staring at a desert island, what would I have? I'd probably not cheeseburgers. What is it called? Grilled cheese. Yeah.
Grilled cheese. Okay. All right. I like that. 4, beer or wine?
Probably wine. Yeah.
Okay. What kind?
Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Red.
Nice. Very good. 5, what is the most memorable Christmas gift you received growing up?
Growing up, shoot. I think probably a Spider-Man web slinger. Shout out Silly String. So that was pretty fun.
Oh, that is fun. I want one, man. That's great. I love it. I just remember taking it wasn't Silly String. It was taking, this is 7th grade, man. I had a troubled childhood. Taking what was it? Shaving cream and putting a pin in there and burning down the cap here, and putting a pin in it so it could shoot about 30 to 50 feet. That was fun. So it's a second. Wow. The things that I did with fire, I would probably be arrested elsewise, but I'm not going to talk about it here on the podcast. And by the way, the show I just looked up is Skeleton Crew. Highly recommend it. It looks like
the guy's Catholic, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. One of the main writers.
Watching it, it's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. I think I'm on episode 4 right now. Definitely worth seeing. Okay. Number 6. What is your bucket list country or city?
New Zealand for sure.
New Zealand. Oh, you're gonna love it, dude.
Hamilton.
You're gonna love it.
Hamilton. Yep.
Yeah. 7. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Probably levitation. I think that'd be pretty fun.
Why?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want it. Awesome.
Jedi powers,
Yes. There's a theme here, people. Do you hear? Yeah. Right? I think Star Wars is a part of your life.
The real question is, does it come with a lightsaber? Is absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
But wait, there's more. Yeah, maybe we can do that, right? Number 8. Have you seen The Chosen?
I have, yeah.
Impossible question. If you can only pick one, your favorite episode?
Favorite episode. Yeah. I think definitely the one with Peter on the boat, we're with the storm. That was really, really moving. There's a lot of story tension built up there, which was fantastic. So I loved it.
Yeah, they did creative license in that. It's very potential storyline there. Spoiler alert about a miscarriage, and definitely I think it was beautifully told. That's in season 3 for those who haven't seen it. Number 9, if you could get everyone to see the world as you do, what would that world look like?
The world look like? Yeah, I think it would be probably my fantasy world a little bit. I mean, so
Levitation everywhere.
Tolkien, people always say, they would say, I love your world, in like this world that you created, because like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm describing the world as I see it, our world as I see it, which is that I guess our world would look like filled with light and goodness and connection and greater connectedness to the world around us and to others, I think. So
I love it. It's beautiful. Offline, I'll talk to you about a book, and it's evading me right now, about the romance and fantasy and things like that. By it's a certain priest. The name is evading me right now. And if you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to check it out, because that's a beautiful way to look at the world. It's good. Number 10, besides your name and date, what do you want on your tombstone?
The melodramatic part of me always thinks, probably not this won't happen, but I always thought about it would be funny to have, and actually I don't know, anyway, fun to have what's his name, Theoden's line, I go to the halls of my fathers, in whose mighty company I might not now feel ashamed. But I probably not. I don't know. I don't know the real one though, but yeah.
Gabriel, I'll just say this to you. Ask your wife. Okay, we'll put it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not bad though. I like it. It's a beautiful line there.
She's Lord of the Rings nerd. She'd be like, okay.
Oh, well then there you go. You win it. Just please don't engrave on your wedding rings like the one ring to bind them all into the darkness. Please don't do that. Okay, that's all I'll say.
Well, I need to change that now.
All right. Anyway, we're revealing a little too much of Gabriel here. All right, number 11. Only one. Favorite saint?
Saint Therese.
Why?
Because she's like clearly the best.
Philomena's gonna have something to say about that, but keep going.
Yeah, no, she just has. I mean, she's a warrior. Like, I think a lot of people think of her as like this, little flower, and she was, but like she was like a spiritual Joan of Arc, man. Like, I mean, yes. She was just her understanding of suffering was like, whenever I wanted like a spiritual kick in the pants, I would like read this little novena book about Saint Therese on suffering, like a 9-day novena book, and like I would just read it, and just her love of suffering for the sake of Jesus and the beloved was like the beloved was just incredible. And yeah, I always saw her as like a big sister, really, honestly, in my prayer life. So
that's awesome. Don't pick on your big sister, okay? I'll leave it at that. All right. Number 12, Gabriel Milano. Why be Catholic?
The Eucharist. We're creating yeah. I mean, I remember reading hearing a Muslim say this once, that like, it's like, if I believed what you believe, then like every Muslim would crawl to mass every single day on their knees. And that there's this, like, what we receive in the Eucharist is literally a taste of heaven. There's these near-death experience of people, which you can read about, like these studies, massive studies. Check out the movie. Have you ever seen the movie After Death at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That, oh my gosh, blew my mind away. And like, as I'm watching this, I'm like, this is what the Eucharist is. We just can't see it. Like, we are immersed in his love in a real way. And like, gosh, I could never leave that, and because that's what we're made for, and just the joy of that, and how that from that it's not just that reality though, like it transforms every aspect of my life, of creating meaning in it, it creates meaning to suffering and to and creates order to everything else, you know, that is in my life and purpose. It's incredible. Yeah.
My heart is so warm hearing what you say in this. It's beautiful. And one commentary, and
Sure.
It's been rumored that Albert Einstein, and I've tried to go back to find evidence of this. I can't find it either way. So if anybody who's hearing this can find it, send it over to me, because I'm intrigued to get a source on this. Towards the end of his life, like the last 6 months of his life, he said the most astonishing thing that he's ever experienced, ever studied in his life, was the Holy Eucharist. Right. So this is a man who like knew about thermodynamics and E equals MC squared, and who's way smarter than I could ever possibly imagine to be smart there. But he was stupefied by what some in the world think is just some sort of strange bread, right? But as the Elvins know from Lord of the Rings, it's not just bread. It is the Word made flesh, who nourishes and sustains the entire universe and sustains you and me, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Gabriel, an honor to meet you, an honor to share a little bit of your heart and introduce you to the world here. Any final thoughts for our audience before we bid adieu?
No, I think that's it. But yeah, thank you so much, Steve. This is a pleasure, and so thank you.
Wonderful. Well, it's an honor to have you, Gabriel. Just hold on the line, and we'll sum off offline here. But to all of those who have been here, we want to thank you for another very educational and very, very insightful episode of the Redeemed Vision podcast. We encourage you to check out the work of TOBET and what they're doing. They really are standing the gap and providing the necessary education on the meaning of the body, that the body matters, and giving especially parents and educators these practical educational tools to guide children in a holy and healthy way here. And as we like to end each episode, may everything we do give glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. And until next time, remember, nothing is wasted. Everything is redeemable. God bless you.
The Redeemed Vision podcast is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. To learn more, check out freedom-coaching.net and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and MeWe.